female. And we know generally it's a very constructive oriented purpose why you're there, whether it's for profession, academic study, community engagement in a very public way. That is totally fine. It's very kind of this private, intimate relationship that we have unclear, but we mix them together. But again, it's that each individual trying to find that space. The world's not always so very clear-cut, black and white. But one thing that's always good is when you actually have factual evidence of what is the situation of a condition, particularly when Muslim women, I would say in the West, and I'm speaking very much from a United States position, but in some of my dialogue in the last few days with Muslim leaders here in the UK and organizations and looking at some of the research, I think there's a quickly catching up in the same dynamics in the UK for the Muslim community. And there's things such as, one, in the United States, the average, again, these are averages. There are, yes, Muslim women that still, unfortunately, take the position of the rest of the earth in our communities. But on average, Muslim women have a higher educational attainment rate than Muslim men across the ethnic communities, whether they're Black, South Asian, Arab, Desi. Two, they're barely just a statistic or so behind the Jewish community of women as being the highest educated women in the United States. Three, Muslim women have on average a higher income per year than Muslim men. So we have greater income power for bringing more money to the household and the community. And one thing that's also in the United States unique, I think still, is the Muslim women attain their Islamic status at equal rate as Muslim men. That doesn't mean their spaces are equal or how we participate practically is the same, but their attendance rate is just the same. And I'm seeing here in the UK, statistics are quickly shifting that way also in this community. So in a larger community, how we look at the Muslim community, especially how they engage, because most of us are going, or immediately going to larger university systems that are public or interact with other people. You're working in Wall Street or universities or any community organization with non-Muslims. Muslim men, in many ways, are actually excelling and surpassing their Muslim men. And that's not a value statement, that's just the fact very much in the United States, and I think could be happening here in the UK. So that leads to the question of how do we separate space and look at how space and the Muslim community and how are we comfortable or uncomfortable with images. So this is true in many ways that Muslim women actually outperform on average Muslim men, higher educational status and attainment. There is a certain level, yes, of media complicity to project the notion of Muslim women being more oppressed in our communities. Why is that? And then two, we have to kind of look at, are Muslim men and Muslim women uncomfortable with promoting potential idea where the Muslim men are excelling? And particularly, I say from the men's point of view, comes to cultural notions of, well, actually Muslim men should be the breadwinners in the home, we should be one attaining more because we have to take care of the women, and these kind of notions to whatever, how truthful they are. But how do we actually go about actually promoting? And I would, as Shelina was stating, in a truly Islamic society, and a society based upon human rights, in the same mutual ways that Islam and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights looks at it, the maqasid, fairly agreed upon by all the 5 schools of Islamic law, are to protect the dignity, Sharia is to protect the dignity of men and women's life, intellectual development, property attainment, freedom of faith, lineage, and Muslim also say dignity. How do we reconcile these issues where actually where Muslim women are achieving, and how do we promote that? And the contradictions where different spaces, is it internally, externally, the Muslim community, the large society where these things are happening? And it's kind of a broad question, but that's the fact of the matter in many ways, and how we make comfortable or uncomfortable, and how we promote these things. But yes, in an ideal society, men and women should achieve education economically all the same for the common benefit of humanity.
Wow, that was a lot in that question. If you don't mind, I just want to pick up on the issue of space that you raised, and I guess I come at it particularly as a blogger, somebody who started, I guess, a reasonably public life as a Muslim on the internet, and it connects to something Amina was saying a few minutes ago. I think the question about how Muslims use space and interact with each other is really important and interesting, and I think it's not just about the interaction of men and women, but also about younger people and older people. Because certainly in traditional subcontinental structures, which I'm more familiar with, the mosque or the Islamic Center was not just a place for men rather than women, but also for older people rather than younger people. And I think the internet has been very interesting because suddenly that kind of gatekeeper issue for expression has just completely disappeared. So for somebody to want to be able to express their opinion is really as simple as going onto the internet and clicking a few buttons and writing a few things or reading what's going on. And I think that really has changed the way that women in particular have started to express themselves, because you don't need to really worry about your reputation in the same way, because you can write anonymously, you can find like-minded people where otherwise you might have been too shy to go and find somebody. But I think the same has happened for younger men as well, where perhaps in the community they may have been concerned about expressing their opinions or again finding like-minded people. So I think that's been a very, very interesting development in terms of space. And I think the only thing we can urge is that mosques and Islamic centers and those running them should is a very easy word to use, much more difficult to implement, be a little bit more willing to just let younger people express their ideas without holding them very sternly to account, because young people change their ideas. You know, you're at a very critical age in your development, but I certainly remember when I was at university, my ideas have changed a great deal since then. It's a natural part of growing up. So I think centres need to think about how they do that. The other thing I would just say about space and gender interaction is simply that I think in most mosques we tend to normalise the male part of the mosque as the standard, and the female tends to be added on as an afterthought. That's both physically and in participation. So I liked Amina's example of poking your head round the curtain to make a comment to the imam or the maulana. It's never going to happen, and that's because the male is normalised. That's where it all happens. And isn't it nice that we let the women come and we give them televisions to participate and see what's going on? And so again, we need to find some kind of model in that space so that the participation, even if it's separate, even if it's segregated, whatever the physical structure we use is that the emotional participation is not detrimental to either side. And I think that's something that we have a real challenge to think about as a community.
Can I tighten it up just a little bit maybe for petition, if I mean this side? Yeah. Because it's also the issue of, and I want to appreciate and recognize, I know the levels, one thing consistently comes up in my discussions with people is the level of discrimination against the Desi and the Muslim community in the UK, which is not very much present in the United States. The funny joke is when you ask most people in the United States, do you know Muslims? They're yes. It's my child's pediatrician, so very high status for Muslims in general. But Muslim women in many ways are attaining now statuses in education, professional achievement in many ways where they can be recognized by by non-Muslims and held to a high status. And in general, Muslims may do it also, but say you're finding a special space where you're studying Islamic sciences. Let's say if you're studying nuclear physics and getting a PhD, a complex subject. Widen the appreciation of also the female Muslim mind to also greater numbers into the Islamic sciences and to give equal status as many scholars, increasing that number. Or say women who are achieving highly in business sciences and management and they're making more money, shouldn't it be assumed they're in a very good position to be actually the head of the mosque board and running the mosque because you can run it efficiently, tightly, in the way that a state association should be. So undervaluing internally the space of the Muslim community, great resources that we've demonstrated historically, but presently at the current juncture that we're not utilizing because maybe internally where Muslims can actually be excelling greatly outside the Muslim community. It's getting to the question over here that someone mentioned that we're having our own internal contradictions on why we're not letting that even grow and possibly more and be comfortable with that.
Well, thank you. That was still very jam-packed with many good points to ponder on. I do want to thank you for your observation.